Ever since I started doing more keyboard content, again, I've been sent more keyboards to review. This is the Tezarre TK63 mechanical keyboard by Punkston. Let's talk about it. Alright, of course, a disclaimer. This was sent out to me for review, but this won't affect my review in any way, shape, or form. Everything you're gonna hear is gonna be my own personal opinion. You'll always get my honest opinion, as always. And, well, with that being said, let's get started. Alright, starting with the box. It's nothing special. It's like any other box. So, open up this box. We have our keyboard, a cable, a keycap puller, a key switch puller, as the switches are hot swappable. You also get Mac and Windows cheat sheets for key combinations, as well as a manual. Taking a closer look at the keyboard, it's very much like any other 60% keyboard with a few differences. For example, it uses pudding style keycaps and interestingly has an arrow key cluster, which is pretty rare on 60%, and as you can see here, they have to use a unique format to fit it, scooting the question mark way off to the side, which is definitely an interesting decision. Another interesting thing about this keyboard is that it actually is IPX4 rated for waterproofing, which is pretty good if you're the type of person who eats and drinks around your keyboard. The rest is pretty typical of budgety 60% keyboards for gaming, with like the floating style keys and all plastic build. Though unfortunately for me, I did notice a manufacturing defect here where the plastic seems stretched and a little cracked. So quality control might be a little bit of concern, but honestly you can just ask for like another one if you have one like this. But the fact remains that it still passed quality control and ended up in my hands. But anyway, on the entire bottom you can tell it is plastic with a few rubber feet here and there. You do get some flip out feet in case you want to put your keyboard at a higher angle, and you do get a wireless dongle in case you want to use this keyboard wirelessly for gaming. So then there's of course the on-off switch. Now aside from using the wireless dongle, you can also connect this keyboard wirelessly through Bluetooth and have it connected to up to 3 different devices, which you can switch between with using the keys up here. And if you just want to charge your battery, you can also just set it to wired mode. Now, as you may notice by some of the legions here, there are options for RGB, which are all baked into the keyboard and have like basically the patterns you'd expect to see in a budget keyboard. Now, regardless of color mode, if the keyboard is in Bluetooth mode and isn't connected to anything, then one of the 3 indicated Bluetooth connection keys will kind of glow to let you know that it is ready to pair. That way you're not stuck wondering if this keyboard is connected or not. Now, I guess I should mention that the keycaps are double shot PBT, so they should be pretty durable. And while they are budget keycaps, they're at least finished decently, though I do wish the secondary legions would also glow, but those are just sublimated on, unfortunately. Now, you do have several choices of what switch you can have with this keyboard, but for me, I have Gateron blacks. But these are optical switches, not mechanical ones, which I'll get into a little bit later. As for stabilizers, they're kind of interesting because they're yellow and they are lubed, but I'm not exactly sure how good the lube job is, so we'll have to test that later. Now, this is one of those more rare and interesting keyboards in that while it is a mechanical keyboard, it doesn't use mechanical switches, it uses optical switches, meaning it's just a piece of plastic that blocks a laser. So the laser is actually built onto the PCB itself, and when you actuate the switch, this little nodule thing comes down from the switch and blocks the laser, therefore actuating the switch. So this is essentially one of those opto-mechanical situations meant to probably compete with like razors, and that's why it uses Gateron's optical switches. Now, the ups and downs of like using an optical switch are heavily debated among the keyboard community and gamers. So like gamers will say like the optical switches can be faster and whatnot, they're more consistent because all you're doing is blocking a light when you press down a key, versus relying on like electrical contacts to touch each other, and they may be more durable, but all of this is very hotly debated. Like when I was playing games, they worked pretty well even when it was like in wireless mode, but only with the USB dongle, of course, as the Bluetooth mode gave me a little bit of lag. So if you're gaming, you should go wired or use the dongle, but with wireless connectivity aside and back on the key switches, I can't say I felt like any great advantage by using optical switches. But I guess I can say that the switches did feel very responsive, but it's not like it made me like a better gamer or anything. But I can see the appeal to gamers where this key switch may feel more responsive and quicker, while also being generally more durable than the mechanical switches, as optical switches are generally known to last about twice as long, supposedly, essentially making it pretty good for gamers who are really rough with their keyboards and really burn through their keys. And while these are pretty good upsides to using optical switches, there are some downsides. A downside that I've come to find about this style does have to come to the sound of the keys due to the way things are built. They tend to have a lot more spring ping in my experience when it comes to the optical switches, so let's take a quick listen. weirdest sounding spacebar I've ever heard. Yeah, not the greatest sound you'll ever want to hear in the world. There's a lot of metallic spring ping going in. This is honestly, in my opinion, and rather my experience, it seems to be a common occurrence within like the optical switch world. And like, you know, while we're in that realm, another downside of optical switches is there's not too many options out there. Like if you're using the Gateron style optical switch, you are limited to basically Gateron optical switches, and they only have like so many options out there. You can't just put on any mechanical keyboard switch on this. It's not going to work. It has to be one of those special optical switches, which haven't really been catching on in terms of like popularity and usage, as most people are still into mechanical ones. So if you're using Gateron opticals like this one, you're basically stuck with Gateron opticals. But hey, that doesn't mean we can't just mod this keyboard at all, so let's get into that. Cracking into this keyboard, I did notice some very interesting things. For starters, inside the case, we can tell that this case was originally designed for a different keyboard, but was retrofitted to fit this new one. Or it was designed to fit different PCBs, depending on which stem here you needed to clip, and this was most likely done to save money. But with that aside, the PCB seems to be pretty well built and is screwed into the top plate, it seems. And when I look closer, I did notice some foam, so I decided to take the whole thing apart, which easily let the PCB go as there's no contact pins to hold it in, as it's once again an optical board. But after removing it, my suspicions were proven true, as there is foam in between the PCB and the top plate, which is very interesting to see on a $70 keyboard, but a welcome addition nonetheless. I'm willing to bet that they probably put this in to try to help mitigate the hollow sound you get from the optical switches, but as you heard from our test, it wasn't enough, so we're going to add some mods like a foam mod, and if that doesn't work, we're going to do a tape mod. Regardless of either, we're going to be lubing those stabs because they were kind of poorly lubed, and if we get mad enough, we're also going to lube the springs of the switches. We do of course have to clip the stabs before we lube them, and once that's done, the first test we're going to do is a foam mod test, and hopefully this will help with the hollowness and pinginess. Alright, it's a little bit better. There's like less ping, but let's see if a tape mod does any different. Alright, tape modded, tape modded. Okay, the differences weren't exactly very stark or magical in that matter, but in either case, it seems the biggest issue that we should fix is like lubing all the springs in the keyboard, as it seems like the biggest issue would be like the very pingy sound of the springs in the keys, and that would be something I would do, but it's a very time-consuming process. And just with how this keyboard is and like my general lack of interest, I don't know if it's worth it for me to just use like a bunch of lube and open every single switch to do it. But you know, I did actually lube a few of them just to see if it made any difference, and you know, it did help a little bit. The ping is not nearly as apparent, so like that's so much better after you like lube the switches just a little bit. Well, I mean, I just lube the springs, but it solves a lot of issues just if you lube the springs. So, you know, that's the biggest thing you can do to this, other than like, you know, the foam mod and tape mod. Those don't do much to it. They kind of help isolate the sound a bit. But if you're gonna mod this for sound, then, you know, you gotta lube those springs. That's how you're gonna get the beautiful sound out of it. Spacebar is still kind of funky though. That never changed for some reason. It's a weird sound. I don't know if it's the keyboard. I don't know if it's the optical switch, but I'm going to bet that it is the optical switch sound, so, you know, it's kind of funky, I don't know. Alright, now clearly I'm being very hard on this keyboard, and that's because I come from a more keyboard enthusiast background where I'm used to using more expensive, fancy, custom keyboards and whatnot. This is not marketed for people like me. This is for gamers specifically. So if you're like a keyboard enthusiast, this is not going to be your board. But if you are a gamer, then keep listening. This is something that's designed more for you guys. It's a 60% keyboard with RGB rainbows and whatnot, and it is essentially designed to take on the Razer Huntsman Mini, which is a wired keyboard, and essentially that costs $120, I believe, and this costs $70, which means you save essentially $50, and that's a lot of money. And at the same time, it also tries to one-up the Huntsman Mini by giving you wireless options. You can connect wirelessly with a USB dongle. Of course, you can still connect wired, but you also have more wireless options through Bluetooth, and you can connect to 3 different devices in case you want to switch between the devices in case you're that kind of person. You can have like Windows mode and Mac mode, really easily switching between those just to make your life a little bit easier. And a lot of people who buy 60% still want to have an arrow key cluster, and this has an arrow key cluster at the sacrifice of like having a weird format. But if you're a gamer, it's not very often that you use the question mark key at all. Like, if honestly, I guess it's very rare for gamers to use, like, you know, punctuation at all anyway. Like, if you're yelling, they don't use an exclamation mark. They just press the caps lock and, you know, just go at it. That's just kind of how it goes when you're a gamer. So this is essentially like 100% a gamer product that tried to go a little bit out of that gamer product realm by adding a bunch of extra features. Like, I don't know if gamers would actually use like this many Bluetooth connections, for example, but fact is it's there, and you know, the Razer Huntsman Mini doesn't have it, so that's what this thing has over it. What it doesn't have over the Huntsman Mini, however, is like sound. The sound is questionable at best. It is very pingy, though I know some of you guys out there who might actually have this keyboard or will buy this keyboard will probably like the sound and not notice the ping at all, as you guys have done with the Razer Huntsman Mini keyboard that I reviewed, which also I found to be pingy, and you guys were like, oh, I didn't hear any ping, or some of you guys were even like, oh, I like the ping, and you know, if you like the ping, then I guess you'll like the ping here as well. So, you know, to each their own. Another thing this thing doesn't have above the Razer Huntsman Mini keyboard is also colors. Razer's always been really good at the whole RGB world stuff. This is a pretty limited option, but you know, if you're on a budget, you're on a budget. That's just kind of how things go. Granted, if you're on a budget, you'd probably go for a much cheaper 60% keyboard at this point, but you know, if you're dead set on using optical switches, you don't have too many options out there. A lot of 60% out there that are cheaper than this will be using mechanical switches, which I don't have a problem with, but I know some of you guys out there really want to use optical switches for whatever reason. Specifically gamers, I think, are very into that these days, and so that limits your options, and this so happens to be one of them. So with all that being said, is this thing even worth it to get as a keyboard, gaming keyboard, whatever? If you're a, you know, like a keyboard enthusiast, absolutely not. I know you know who you are, and you probably aren't even watching that video, come to think of it, because you're not looking for keyboards like this. You know a Game Boy keyboard when you see one. But if you're a gamer looking for a small compact 60% keyboard that still has arrow keys, then this might just do it for you. However, I should, you know, note that there is that quality control issue, which I feel like they're probably gonna reprimand me in an email about, but the fact is you guys sent me this keyboard as a review unit with this, and this passed quality control, which is no bueno. So, you know, this is a good wake-up call. Do get your stuff together, you know, gather your stuff together, make sure your quality control is a little bit better on the process, because the fact remains, this has come out. Though, I could be just extremely unlucky, so I'm pretty sure anyone who buys this keyboard won't have this issue, and if you do, just contact them. They'll probably, like, send you another one. For me, just want to point that out so that they know and you know and we all know. So, you know, this could bite me in the butt later, but that's the life of a reviewer for you. So, with that being said, if you do want to buy this keyboard, I will leave a link in the description. It's just right there. I don't think it gives me a kickback at all, though. It's just there in case you want to buy it. What else is there? Oh, right. If this video did help you out with your buying decision or not buying decision, or made you want to buy a different keyboard instead, well, you know, there is, you know, just leave a like there. It helps me survive in this whole YouTube space. Subscribe for more content. Hit the notification bell if you want to know when I'm posting next. Follow me on Twitch. Watch me stream, die, and, you know, test things every now and then. But mostly streaming and playing games. So, you know, come in, hang out. I'll be around. So, that being said, I'll see you guys next time.